This is Tech Talk Detroit with Brian Spurgeon and Chuck Lobert. Tech Talk Detroit brings you the latest in tech news and Detroit happenings every week.
Welcome back to Tech Talk Detroit. We apologize. We know that we missed a couple of weeks here with everything that's going on. Things have been pretty crazy around the office and around, well, not so much around the office. We're working from home, but in the business. So we've been very busy, and apologize that we missed a couple of weeks. But we're trying to get back on track here. So we're doing this across Zoom, so we'll see how this goes. But Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Just getting real settled in here. Got a lot of big plans for the weekend, so yeah, I'm doing good. Just adjusting like everybody else is at this point.
Yeah, I like the picture that's been going around on social media about looking at a map for their social plans, and it's like a layout of a house, figuring out where they're going to go.
I know. I ran out of closets to organize and drawers to rearrange, so I don't know what I'll get into this weekend. But we'll see.
Maybe take a walk around your backyard.
Yeah, maybe. See if there's a new bush I haven't found.
Yeah, things have been going crazy. As obviously everyone's well aware with COVID-19. In Michigan here, where we are on Monday, there was a shelter-in-place order put in place. So, it kind of meant that everybody had to start working from home now. We're on, I think, week 2 officially today of working from home ourselves. And even though we had everything in place to be able to quickly go to that, because it's something that we'll do from time to time anyways, when you start looking at it as more of an extended thing, I don't know about you, Brian, but there's definitely been some things that I have learned that I hadn't thought of previously when you're working from home, for a day or a couple of days versus, like I say, going on 2 weeks and looking like it's going to be a little while here. Before we can get back. There's definitely some extra things that I hadn't thought about when for that long-term work from home scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. For one, the coffee you're on the hook to make yourself now. You can't split up the duties amongst everybody else in the office. I think for me, it's been trying to find a good, comfortable spot to work where I can really be the most productive. I've kind of floated all around my house, but I think you learn to appreciate a dedicated workspace like you typically have in an office. And then obviously I think there's just a lot of challenges in terms of collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
The good and bad of collaboration is we've kind of moved into that type of workforce in a lot of different aspects, and we rely on collaboration a lot. But I think for us, the reality is we still collaborate in person typically, or you collaborate 20 feet away. So I think not having that security blanket of just being able to walk over and poke somebody real quick and, the things you really shouldn't do anyways, it kind of forces you to use your tools and quickly, you quickly realize maybe some areas where you hadn't thought of or hadn't built out yet. So we've been doing a lot of adjustment on the fly, and, ultimately though, I think it's gone really well, but definitely some adjustments.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely has gone, smoothly, but, that's, you mentioned the comfortable factor. That was a big one for me, as I very quickly realized that, I didn't really have a good office chair. A lot of times if I'm just working from home for a day, I might sit downstairs at the kitchen table or something like that and work there for the day. But, I ended up running to the office before the shelter in place went in and picked up my office chair. So that I could have the nice, comfortable office chair. And then I think the other big thing that a lot of people hadn't thought of, I know I hadn't really thought of, was having, at work, we've got these setups with dual monitors and the docking stations and all of that kind of stuff that really lends itself to the productivity of the day. And, so when you're working from home and you just got your laptop and that's it, you lose a lot of that. And so, that was another thing that when I went to the office to pick up the chair, I picked up that whole dual monitor setup and everything, and I've kind of got that dedicated workspace now created here at home. And again, it's not something that you're going to do for if you're just working from home for like a day, but if it's going to be an extended period, it's nice to be able to keep up that productivity with all the different tools that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to add it to our global pandemic process for next time. So
Yeah, and I think, getting used to different conferencing apps has definitely been one too. I mean, we use Teams extensively, so we're very familiar with that. But I've been using Zoom quite a bit now as well. I've been done not GoToMeeting, but Join Me a bit as well now. So I think that's another thing, is we're just kind of getting used to a lot of the different tools that are out there that help us collaborate and keep in touch with people, since we can't really see anybody outside of the family.
Absolutely, yeah. So figure today, we can, a lot of this stuff, we've kind of hit some good talking points in the past podcast that really kind of led up to this unknowingly. We've hit on the virtual desktops, we've hit on, the ability to work remote and things like that. But now that, we're a few weeks for most people into this, quarantine, lockdown mode, we thought it would obviously just be good to kind of rehash a couple things, and then also to kind of just share from our experiences in terms of just the businesses we've worked with, some of the feedback we're seeing, maybe some of the concerns that weren't necessarily thought of on a grand scale that's come to the surface now. But we thought we would take some time today just to share that a bit as well.
Yeah, I think we've learned quite a bit over the past few weeks as well. I think we've found, just talking to other businesses, even in our industry, what we've found is that a lot of businesses were not prepared for this. As far as the quickly have a large amount of the staff working from home. So I think it shows us, in the future that, it's something that maybe some more thought needs to go into to be prepared so that if anything like this were to ever come up again, hopefully it wouldn't, but if it were to, that, the infrastructure is in place, the systems are in place, the security is in place to make sure that if we do have to, quickly go to a work from home scenario, we can do so and know that basically the business is going to keep running, more or less like usual.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So why don't we start a bit with just hitting on the actual options, that most businesses should be looking at, if they're not already, that the likely remote from home, work from home solutions that are in place. The most common one is I hope that everybody at this point has, heeded our advice in terms of getting Office 365 in place. And really, I think everybody should be in a position where you're seeing where you can actually leverage a lot of the products that come with most subscriptions for Office 365. I think SharePoint, this is a scenario where if your file folders were already moved into SharePoint, you're seeing the full advantage of it. Doesn't matter where you're at, as long as you have an internet connection, you can get to your data. And if you're working under that model, there probably hasn't been a ton of change to you by going to this work from home force. In addition, I think the other big key is a lot of businesses are moving towards using the VPN, the secure connection to your business firewall, to then connect in these computers from home into the business network, so you can access your file shares that are on a traditional file server, and also your line of business application. So both solutions can work great, but I think the key is to understand that there's going to be some drawbacks to then extending your business data to, in particular, home PCs.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing to always keep in mind too is that, even if this stuff is in place to a certain degree, if it's not fully set up or you don't have enough licensing for everybody, it's going to take some time. So if let's say you've got 5 VPN licenses, but you have a workforce of 50 people, and now all 50 people have to be able to work from home, you're going to have 45 of those people that aren't going to be able to work for, at best, probably a couple of days. I mean, it takes a little bit of time to get some VPN licensing. Stuff like SharePoint, almost every Office 365 or Microsoft 365 plan includes it, but if your data is not already there, it's not like you can just say tomorrow, hey, we want to start working in SharePoint Online. This is all stuff that really needs to be planned out and thought of ahead of time. And then taking it the step further, as you brought out, now you got to also worry about those home computers. Are they being updated? Do they have antivirus on them? Has the home user upgraded to Windows 10 yet? There's a lot of things that now come into play from a security perspective that could, if not handled properly, be detrimental to the business. If you have somebody that's accessing business data on, say, a Windows 7 computer, and especially one that may or may not have antivirus on it, even if you're going across that VPN, that's a huge security threat right there that could ultimately, with that VPN connection to your business, could take down all of the data in the business if there's a ransomware attack or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is there's two layers to the security of a VPN connection. The VPN encryption security level itself, which is basically creating this tunnel from, in this case, users' home internet directly into the office. That connection from the outside in is very secure. So somebody that's trying to hack into that VPN tunnel, that's going to be a very tough thing to do. So that it's a very secure connection that's in place. Where the problem is you've now created this direct tunnel into the business network. So it's the endpoint security that really becomes the problem. There's a couple layers there. Home users, most people are probably just using their provided router and firewall that's given from the ISP, and it's who knows if it's even set up properly to even be blocking anything. I know for a lot of the providers, they're also broadcasting public Wi-Fi from the equipment that you rent. So that prevents another issue. Is that locked down? Is your neighbors connected to that Wi-Fi and that public Wi-Fi, and do they have access to your data, right, on the home network? So I think there's a piece of that element from the network security level. You're talking about a business having a business grade firewall to most home offices not having anything like that in place. Then the other big piece is the actual endpoint security. The obvious things like you mentioned. Does the user do they have an active antivirus subscription that's set up properly? Is it even set up to scan, right? All the things that we manage for our clients, you can't guarantee that the home user is doing the same. And then the other big thing is, obviously we hit earlier a couple months ago on the end of support for the Windows 7 operating system. And I think, we're seeing a decent percentage of home computers that are still on Windows 7. The average home computer, I don't think people are, unlike businesses where you typically upgrade every 4 to 5 years, I don't think that's a common practice for home computers, right? I know it wasn't when I was growing up. So, right. You're going to expect to see that a bit. And the reality is when you do create this secure tunnel, you're also bringing in all the potential vulnerabilities of that home computer. So I think having a true, bring your own device policy in place becomes super critical if you want to maintain the integrity of your business.
Yeah, and I think, to be clear, it's not that we're saying that people at home have necessarily done anything wrong, and especially not intentionally. People, for people's home computers, they're not as worried about security a lot of times. They're not as worried about being up to date with the latest and greatest all the time. But now when we're talking about moving the workforce from a business computer to a home computer, now you do have to worry about that. So, and there's certain things that you can do, even if there is Windows 7 in the environment, you certainly don't want to just install a VPN and give them access to your data. That you don't want to do, because now you've got an unsecure computer just by nature that has access to your data. But you can there are still options that you can do where that doesn't involve them having to figure out how to go get a new home computer when it's hard to do so right now, right? So that's where stuff like the Windows Virtual Desktop comes into place, or remote desktop. If things are properly secure, now connecting to like a Windows Virtual Desktop from a Windows 7 computer is less of an issue for a couple of reasons, right? I mean, one reason is if you have Windows Virtual Desktop, it gives you extended support on Windows 7, so you can still keep getting those updates. So that could be put in place. But the other one is just that it's a more secure platform, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because ultimately, your you're extending this Windows 10 desktop to any computer, but that desktop resides within the security blanket of your business network. So you're actually, as opposed to extending your data down to a home computer, you're asking the home computer to go up into the secure cloud and access the data from there. So you actually, you're not syncing the data to the user's home computer, and you're not creating this direct access to like your shared drives and such, where really you put yourself at risk. So yeah, the virtual desktop is a perfect scenario for that. And really that's, we were talking about SharePoint, right? For file shares, that's the key. If it's in place, you're loving that choice right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not in place, that's not a solution you're going to be able to spin up, even in a couple weeks would be an aggressive play,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how much data you have, because there's so much that goes into that. I think, to rush into a SharePoint deployment and not think it out, it's something that you probably would not be happy with. So that's not really a solution right now at this point, but the Windows Virtual Desktop absolutely is. I think it's very cost effective in terms of what your per user cost would be. And then also you get the security concerns. You can't really put a price tag on securing your business, and the accessibility, the fact that you can get to it from anything. Again, the iPhones, Androids, tablets, home computer, work computer, doesn't matter. You can get to it, and it's just hit right through a web browser. So, that's the ultimate solution that I think I would endorse in a time like this. If you don't currently have a work from home solution, I would absolutely look at the Windows Virtual Desktop as the go-to. It can be spun up and implemented within a couple days max, and that's properly testing it, installing applications, configuring, taking advantage of all the features and stuff. It's a very fast turnaround on getting that solution in place.
Right, because then along with that, you can choose to more long-term move your servers to the cloud as well. But in the interim, for the quick turnaround, you can just connect that Windows Virtual Desktop to your office and access all of your applications and data and everything that still resides in your office. So as long as your office is up and running, has power, has internet, now you can really just keep functioning like normal regardless of where people are at. So I think that's the big thing is it's not something that's going to take, as you mentioned, weeks to get implemented. It's something that within a couple of days you could have your entire workforce working from home in a secure manner. And then moving forward, once this all passes and we get past it, it's something that you could easily keep in place and have it be the way that people work. A lot of companies want that option to be able to have that as a when people aren't feeling well, instead of them taking a sick day, maybe they can stay home and work from home. Somebody's kid is sick and needs to stay home from school, they can stay home and work from home, and you don't lose the productivity. They can keep the business running like normal. So I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I think it's the best way to explain it is really the Windows Virtual Desktop can be a bolt-on to your existing environment. It's not a whole new solution that replaces the way you work. You still come into the office, you have the option. You can either work out of that desktop or you can work off your normal work computer. You have the flexibility, but it's a bolt-on. So you don't have to go and worry about moving all of your servers up to the cloud, or if you just invested in the infrastructure for your servers, that doesn't get affected. You still run your normal servers off of the normal hardware, but this can just bolts on and gives you another means to access it securely. So I think that's the key. But yeah, I think the big thing is just the Windows 7 operating systems is what we're seeing a lot of, and it's something that I think businesses should be concerned about. I think if you are the type of business that's rolling out VPN access, you don't have this remote desktop server, or you don't have a virtual desktop server, I think a business should take a hard stance on not allowing Windows 7 PCs to have VPN. That's what I would say. I think when you
absolutely
when you're sitting there and you're thinking about the potential risk of what that means, and you're thinking about what the trade-off is, it's certainly not worth it. The crypto virus and stuff that goes out there and encrypts all of your data and you can't access it. That stuff is still very real. There's still a lot of that going on. And this is a type of scenario where there's a lot of data out there showing there's an uptick on security breach attempts right now, because they know everybody's working from home and they know they're able to get in and do what they need to do without having to break through a corporate firewall. So, I think that's the most obvious thing is the Windows 7 should be a absolutely no on any company's, bring your own device type policy.
Yeah, and I think that's, very important. A point that you mentioned there to reiterate is, the bad people are called the bad people for a reason, right? They're looking at any way they can to try to get into the network, to try to get data that they can use, to try to steal whatever they can steal. So it's not like they're going, oh, there's this global pandemic going on, we should hold off for now because it's not the right thing to do. They're seeing this as an opportunity. Now people are accessing data in a less secure fashion, so now I have an opportunity to be able to get that data easier than it was, say, 3 weeks ago. So that's why it's very important to stress the security factor of all of this is, it's so many security holes. Let's say you've got a company of 50 people and say everybody's going to work from home and say 10 of those haven't updated their home computers yet. That's now 10 access points into your environment, into your data that weren't there the day before everybody went and started working from home. So, it's just such a huge security concern to think about. So, obviously if you're connecting to the office, you do need VPN. That's step one, call it, but you have to make sure that the home computer is properly secured. That's, call it step two. So got, Windows at least 8 or above, and it's got a decent antivirus that's properly updated, excuse me, and configured. But now the next step is really, the multi-factor authentication on that VPN, correct?
Yeah, that's something we didn't hit on. That's absolutely key. Yeah, most business firewalls have the ability for you to turn on multi-factor authentication for your VPN connections. And I think, that's another necessary and great security measure to put in place. You're going to ensure, because now that you're creating all of these VPN accounts for people to access, that only the users that you've granted permission to use the VPN can actually do it. So that's another great point.
Yeah, and then beyond that, if remote desktop is in place, that's good. But I think as we've made clear, probably your most secure, not probably, but your most secure and best option is a cloud-based virtual desktop. We have talked a lot about Windows Virtual Desktop because we're a Microsoft partner, and that's where our focus is right now, is on Windows Virtual Desktop. And but I think at a very minimum, you got to make sure that you've got a VPN, that the home computers are set up properly, that you have the MFA in place. From there, now you can make it a lot more secure too. But I think that's your what you would call your base security, that for people working from home.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we've gone a little bit longer than typical, but there's kind of a lot to talk about right now. We're going to try to keep on the weekly schedule here as best we can. Our industry, thankfully with that shelter-in-place order that went into place, our industry, information technology, was considered an essential business. So we are still, excuse me, I got something in my throat here. We are considered an essential business, so we're keeping things running like normal. So we've got a lot of things going on in the background. The service team has been super busy with calls coming in from, a lot of it is getting people set up properly to work from home. So we're going to do our best to keep on a weekly podcast here, but as things go here, as things are busy, we may or may not stick to that, but we're doing our best to.
Absolutely, yeah. And just two pieces of info to add to that real quick is we did put together a pretty detailed webinar on Windows Virtual Desktop. Chuck, I'll let you give the info on how to access that. And then the other piece is, if you're listening to this, you're going through some struggles in terms of trying to transition your workforce to remote. please feel free to take advantage of shooting us some questions. Would love to see questions, and we'll gladly get those answered on the next week's podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So to access that webinar, if you go to our website, it's vcsolutions.com, and then go do /remote. So vcsolutions.com/remote. On the bottom of that page, there's a link to view the webinar. It's entitled, "Can Your Business Survive a 2-Week Quarantine?" And we're going through, we've got Abby on that one as well, who we had on a previous podcast. And she's on there talking about SharePoint, as well as Brian and I talking about Windows Virtual Desktop and just some other things as well. Or if you just go to our homepage, you can go under resources and go to events as well, and that's another way to get to it. I also wanted to mention something that we're taking advantage of. A good friend of mine owns a catering company, Hickory Barbecue and Grill, and they started doing this program where you can sponsor lunch for one of the local ER staff, doctors and nurses, and Vision's sponsoring 2 this coming Monday. We're going to sponsor one at Providence and Novi and one at St. Joe's in Ann Arbor. We feel like it's such an important thing. We get to work from home, right? We get to be safe and stay in our homes, but these healthcare workers have to go out every single day and work in the front line, so to speak, taking care of everybody that's being affected by this. So, my buddy came out with this idea, and we really liked it. So we're doing it. If it's something that anybody else is interested in doing, we'll have some stuff on our social media about it as well, so that you have links to it. But if you look up Hickory Barbecue and Grill, they'll be able to help you out as well. It's they share some of the expenses as well, so that they're donating some, we're donating some, and ultimately the ER staff gets to have a nice meal and a little bit of appreciation for everything that they're doing right now.
Yeah, I think it's a great cause. I was really happy when we decided to make that partnership with them, and yeah, I think that's a great point. Is they're the frontline workers right now, so we got to do everything we can to support them.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining. We'll talk to you again next week, and everybody stay safe and have a good week until then.
Interact with Tech Talk Detroit at techtalkdetroit.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.